The blueprint was burning. Wren Thorne watched the edges of her father's final design curl and blacken in Frank Callahan's calloused hand. 12 years of pencil-drawn precision reducing to ash in the kitchen sink. The smoke detector screamed. Frank didn't flinch. "Your daddy's dead, girl." His words came out whiskey thick, each syllable a stone dropping into dark water. "These fantasies of yours building castles in the woods, they die with him." Wren's fingers pressed white against the counter edge. On the kitchen table behind Frank sat the manila envelope from Guarantee Life Insurance final notice. Beneficiary assignment required. $250,000, hers in 3 months when she turned 18. His if she signed today. The last ember of James Thorne's Ridge Haven project dissolved into gray powder. Frank turned to her, and for a moment, just a breath, Wren saw something that wasn't anger. It was need. Raw and desperate and more dangerous than rage. "Sign the papers," he said. "We'll call it even. You can stay." Outside the kitchen window, Ash, her mother's German shepherd, stood rigid in the winter driveway, ears back, a low growl vibrating through 9 years of loyalty and training. The dog knew what Wren was only beginning to understand. Some structures, her father once told her, aren't built to stand forever. They're built to give you time to run. Wren looked at the ash in the sink, then at the door. She ran. The screen door cracked against its frame. Cold Virginia air hit her face like a slap. January wind cutting through her flannel shirt and the wool sweater beneath. Behind her, Frank's roar split the twilight, a sound more animal than human bourbon, and desperation given voice. Ash was already moving, a gray shadow peeling away from the porch steps to fall in beside her. The dog's shoulder pressed against her thigh as they hit the gravel driveway, his breath coming in sharp white clouds. 9 years old and still faster than her, still loyal to a dead woman's daughter, because loyalty was the only language he'd been taught. The truck. She needed the truck. But Frank's Silverado blocked the driveway, its rust-eaten bulk squatting between her and escape. She veered left instead toward the tree line where the property ended, and the Jefferson National Forest began. 200 yards of frozen mud and dead grass. The forest was a black wall against the dying light, pine and oak and hemlock, standing sentinel over secrets her father had buried there. Her backpack. She'd left it by the door. Inside, $300 in crumpled 20s, her mother's wedding ring, the USB drive, with every photo of her father she owned. Gone now. All of it gone. Except for one thing. Her hand found the inner pocket of her jacket. Felt the sharp corner of the folded paper she'd hidden there that morning. Not the blueprint Frank had burned that had been a copy, a decoy she'd printed at the library. The real one, the original her father had drawn in pencil and ink and coffee-stained obsession, was pressed against her ribs right now. Ridge Haven Project. Grid coordinates. Elevation marks, water table depth. Emergency cache locations marked with tiny red X's. Her father's handwriting in the margin for Wren. When you need it. She needed it now. The first trees swallowed them. Ash didn't hesitate, didn't look back. He knew these woods. Diane Thorne had trained him here using methods her late husband had taught her, teaching the dog to follow trail markers invisible to human eyes, to find water sources and game paths, and the hidden places where the mountain kept its secrets. Wren had watched those training sessions from the porch, 10 years old and bored, not understanding that her mother was teaching the dog to save her life. Behind her, Frank's voice echoed across the open ground. Not words anymore, just rage, formless and raw. Then the sound of his boots on gravel. He was coming. Wren's lungs burned. The forest floor was a treacherous mess of exposed roots and frost-slicked leaves, every step a gamble against a turned ankle, or a fall that would end this before it started. But Ash moved like water through the obstacles, his body low and efficient, and she followed his path, trusted his choices. The light was dying fast. In another 20 minutes it would be full dark, and she had no flashlight. No headlamp, nothing but the fading gray sky, filtering through bare branches overhead. The temperature was dropping too. The weather report that morning had called for snow after midnight, 2 to 4 inches, temperatures in the teens. She would freeze out here, unless she found it. The blueprint crinkled against her chest as she ran. She'd studied it so many times she'd memorized every line, every notation. Ridge Haven wasn't just a name. It was a place. A real place her father had built in secret over the course of 2 years before he died, working weekends and stolen evenings while Wren's mother was still alive. And the world still made sense. A bunker carved into the mountain itself, designed to hold 2 people for 6 months if necessary. He'd never finished it. The cancer took him when Wren was 5, and the project died with him. Or so she'd thought. But 3 weeks ago, cleaning out the crawl space beneath her bedroom, she'd found the metal box. Inside the blueprint, a letter in her father's handwriting, and a small brass compass with coordinates engraved on the back. The letter had been brief, clinical, almost the way engineers wrote when emotion threatened to crack the foundation of their words. Wren, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't stay to teach you everything, but I built something for you. For the day when staying becomes more dangerous than leaving. Ridge Haven is real. 60% complete. Garrett Doyle knows the rest. Trust him. Trust yourself. The mountain will keep you safe if you let it. Love, Dad. She'd read it 20 times that first night. Then she traced every line of the blueprint with her finger. Cross-referenced the coordinates with topographic maps from the library, calculated distances and elevation gains and approach vectors. Her father had been methodical. The bunker was 8 miles into the forest, hidden beneath a granite ridge on the eastern slope of Bear Wallow Mountain. Far enough from civilization to be invisible. Close enough to reach on foot if you knew the way. Garrett Doyle. She'd looked him up. James Thorne's business partner for 15 years, co-owner of Thorne and Doyle Architectural Design, until the firm dissolved after her father's death. Now 75 years old, according to public records, living off-grid somewhere in the Blue Ridge. No phone number, no email, just a P.O. box in a town 40 miles north. She'd written him a letter. No response. But the blueprint was enough. It had to be enough. A branch whipped across her face, drawing blood. She tasted copper and kept running. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit were fading. Frank was drunk out of shape, lungs wrecked by 30 years of Marlboro Reds. He couldn't maintain this pace. Not in the dark. Not in terrain that wanted to break ankles and punish arrogance. But he wouldn't stop looking. Not with $250,000 on the line. Ash slowed, then stopped. His ears swiveled forward, body tense. Wren froze beside him, chest heaving, sweat cooling instantly on her skin. She listened. Water. The soft rush of a stream somewhere ahead. And something else. A low, rhythmic sound that didn't belong to the forest. Breathing. Human breathing. A beam of light cut through the trees 30 yards to her right, sweeping in a slow arc. Flashlight. Handheld, powerful, the kind deer hunters used. But it wasn't Frank. The movement was too controlled, too methodical. Someone else was out here. Wren dropped to a crouch, one hand on Ash's neck. The dog's muscles were coiled springs under her palm, but he held position waiting for her command. Diane Thorne had trained him well. Too well, maybe. The kind of training you gave a dog when you knew the world was more dangerous than your daughter understood. The light swept closer. She could see the silhouette behind it now. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the easy confidence of someone who owned this darkness. Not Frank. Someone worse, maybe. These woods weren't empty. Her father had told her that once years ago when she'd asked why he hiked armed. Private land, public land, it didn't matter. The mountains belonged to whoever was willing to defend them. The figure stopped. The light angled down, illuminating something on the ground. A trap. Steel jaws glinting in the LED beam. The man knelt, checked the mechanism, reset it with practiced efficiency. Then he stood and moved on deeper into the forest, the light fading to a distant firefly glow. Poacher or trapper. Someone who knew these woods better than she did, who would recognize an intruder when he saw one. Wren waited until the light disappeared completely. Then she waited another 3 minutes, counting her heartbeats before she moved. The stream was closer now. She could hear it clearly, water moving over stone in the eternal conversation that mountains have with gravity. Ash led her down a shallow ravine, his paws finding purchase on rocks she could barely see. The temperature dropped as they descended, cold air pooling in the low places like water in a well. Her hands were numb. She'd left without gloves, without a proper coat, without any of the things a person needed to survive a January night in the Blue Ridge. All she had was the blueprint, the compass, and a dog who remembered a dead woman's voice. It would have to be enough. The stream appeared below them, a ribbon of black water reflecting the last gray light from the sky. Ash didn't hesitate. He stepped into the current, waded across to the far bank, then shook himself in a spray of icy droplets. Wren followed, gasping as the water filled her boots, soaked through her jeans. The cold was a living thing, teeth and claws sinking into her bones. On the far bank, she stopped, pulled the blueprint from her jacket, with shaking hands unfolded it carefully. The paper was damp, but intact. Her father's lines still crisp and clear. She oriented herself, using the stream, the slope of the land, the darkening sky. North was that way. The ridge was northeast, following the water upstream for half a mile, then cutting east up the slope. She folded the blueprint, tucked it back inside her jacket, looked at Ash. "Find it, boy." The dog's ears perked. He lifted his nose, testing the air, then started upstream at a steady trot. Not following a scent, following memory. The ghost of Diane Thorne's footsteps laid down years ago when she'd walked these same paths with her dog and her husband's secrets. Wren followed. The forest changed as they climbed. The hardwoods gave way to conifers, their branches heavy with the weight of approaching snow. The air smelled different here. Cleaner. Colder. like stone and ice and the deep earth beneath. Her father had loved this smell. She remembered that suddenly a fragment of memory surfacing without warning. 5 years old, riding on his shoulders during a hike, him pointing out birds and trees and the bones of the mountain showing through the soil. This is old Earth Wren, older than anything humans ever built. Respect it, and it'll keep you safe. She wondered if he'd known even then that she would need this knowledge. If the cancer diagnosis had already come back, if he was already building Ridgehaven in his mind, planning for a future where he wouldn't be there to protect her. The stream narrowed. The slope steepened. Her thighs burned with the effort of climbing, and her wet boots had raised blisters on both heels. But Ash kept moving, tireless, purpose-driven, and she refused to be weaker than a 9-year-old dog. Darkness fell completely. The forest became a maze of shadows and sound. Wind through the pines, the creek's endless murmur, her own breathing ragged and desperate, and underneath it all, silence. The massive, indifferent silence of a mountain that had stood for millions of years and would stand for millions more long after she was bones and dust. She almost missed it. Ash stopped at the base of a granite outcropping, a wall of stone rising 20 feet into the darkness. To Wren's eyes, it was just rock, just another obstacle. But the dog sat down, looked back at her, and waited. She approached slowly, ran her hand over the stone. It was real solid, ancient, nothing unusual, nothing that suggested human hands had ever touched this place. Then her fingers found the edge. Not a natural crack. Too straight. Too deliberate. A seam disguised by lichen and shadow where two surfaces met at an angle that shouldn't exist in nature. She followed it down, feeling her way in the darkness until her hand hit something that wasn't stone. Wood. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled out the blueprint, but it was too dark to read. She traced the wood with her fingers instead, building a mental image. Planks. Old, weathered, swollen with years of moisture. But underneath, something else. Metal. Hinges. A door. She found the handle by touch. A simple iron ring, rusted, but solid. She pulled. Nothing. The door was sealed or locked or so swollen with age that it had become part of the mountain itself. She pulled harder, put her weight into it, her boots scrabbling for purchase on the wet stone. Ash watched her patient and unmoving as if this was exactly what he'd expected. The door groaned, a sound like the mountain itself complaining. Then, with a shriek of metal on metal, it moved. An inch, 2 inches. Enough for Wren to get both hands into the gap and pull with everything she had left. The door swung open. Air rushed out. Not fresh air. Old air. Still and cool and carrying the scent of dust and stone and something else. Something familiar that she couldn't quite place. Machine oil. She stepped inside. Ash followed his body pressed against her leg. The darkness was absolute, thicker than the forest night. The kind of darkness that existed underground, where light had never reached. She stood still, letting her other senses adjust. The space felt small but not cramped. The air was dry despite the moisture outside. And the floor beneath her feet was level, smooth, artificial. Concrete. Her father had been here. had poured this foundation, built this entrance, created this space from nothing but will and engineering and the desperate need to protect a daughter he wouldn't live to see grow up. Wren's throat tightened. She forced the emotion down, locked it away in the same place she'd locked everything else since her mother died. Grief was a luxury. Survival was not. She needed light. Her hand found her pocket, felt for the small plastic lighter she'd carried since she was 14. A habit stolen from Frank, ironically enough. She flicked it once, twice. On the third try, the flame caught. The space jumped into flickering existence around her. She was standing in a room roughly 15 feet square. The walls were bare granite on 3 sides, concrete on the 4th where the door was mounted. The ceiling was low, maybe 7 feet, supported by steel beams that ran the width of the space. In the center of the room sat a camping table with 2 folding chairs. On the table, a Coleman lantern, a box of wooden matches, and a green canvas notebook. The notebook's cover was stained and faded, but she recognized the handwriting on the label immediately. Ridge Haven, Phase 1. James Thorne, December 2012. Her father's project journal. Wren picked it up with shaking hands, her lighter, casting dancing shadows across the pages as she opened it. The first entry was dated December 8th, 2012, 2 weeks before the cancer diagnosis that would kill him 6 months later. Site survey complete. Granite bedrock at 8 feet. Natural fissure extends back approximately 40 feet height. Variable 6 to 12 feet. Water table at 35 feet accessible via hand pump. Foundation poured today. Eleanor thinks I'm working late. God forgive me for the lies, but this is necessary. If Frank ever becomes what I think he'll become, Wren will need this place. Eleanor, her mother, dead now for 2 years. The cancer taking her the same way it had taken James, as if the disease was some kind of family curse written into their DNA. Wren flipped through the pages. Each entry was brief, technical. A record of materials purchased and work completed. Reading between the lines, she could see the progress. Foundation to walls, walls to ventilation, ventilation to water system. Each phase meticulously planned, each detail cross-referenced with engineering standards and building codes that didn't technically apply to secret bunkers hidden in national forest land. The last entry was dated May 15th, 2013. Phase 1 complete. 60% of original plan. I'm out of time. The doctors say 3 weeks, maybe 4. Garrett will finish it. I've left him the plans and the coordinates. He promised. I have to trust that promise. I have to trust that if Wren ever needs this place, she'll find it. And if she finds it, she'll know what to do. She's smarter than she thinks, stronger than she knows. She's her father's daughter. The lighter burned her thumb. She dropped it, and darkness swallowed the room again. She stood there for a long moment, breathing in the dust, and the machine oil, and the ghost of her father's presence. Then she bent down, found the lighter, picked it up, flicked it back to life, carried the flame to the Coleman lantern on the table, and lifted the glass chimney. The lantern caught on the first try. White light flooded the space, bright and steady and real. Wren turned slowly, taking inventory. The main room was exactly as her father had described it in the journal, but at the back wall, half hidden by a shadow, she saw something the lighter hadn't revealed. Another opening. Not a door this time, A passage, narrow, rough-hewn, leading deeper into the mountain. Ash approached it cautiously, sniffed the darkness beyond, then looked back at her. Wren picked up the lantern, followed the dog into the passage. It opened after 10 feet into a larger chamber. The ceiling here was higher, maybe 12 feet, and the space was natural, formed by some ancient shift in the bedrock that had created a pocket of air in the heart of the stone. But nature wasn't the only force that had shaped this room. Against the far wall stood a workbench, its surface covered in tools. Hammers and saws and drills, all carefully arranged and protected by oiled tarps. Beside the workbench, stacks of lumber still dry after a decade in this sealed environment. Bags of concrete mix, coils of copper pipe, boxes of electrical wire. Everything needed to finish what James Thorne had started. And in the center of the room, covered by a heavy canvas tarp, something large. Wren set the lantern down on the workbench, approached the tarp slowly, as if it might be alive, might object to being disturbed. She gripped one corner and pulled. The tarp slid away to reveal a cache. Military surplus from the look of it. 3 large wooden crates stacked one on top of another, each one stenciled with faded markings. U.S. Army. Do not open. Authorized personnel only. She lifted the lid of the top crate. Inside, packed in protective foam, were supplies. Canned goods, MRS, water purification tablets, first aid kits, wool blankets still in their vacuum-sealed packaging, batteries, candles, rope, duct tape, a hand-crank radio. Everything a person would need to survive for months without seeing another human being. The second crate held more tools. A bow saw, a folding shovel, a pickaxe, a pry bar. And at the bottom, wrapped in waxed canvas, a beautiful lever-action rifle with a box of ammunition beside it. Wren lifted the rifle carefully. It was heavy, solid, well-maintained despite its age. A Marlin .336, if she was reading the stamp correctly. .30-30 caliber, her father's rifle. She remembered it vaguely from childhood, remembered him cleaning it at the kitchen table while her mother complained about guns in the house. The third crate was different, lighter. When she opened it, she found books, survival manuals, field guides to edible plants and animal tracking, medical handbooks, and at the bottom a stack of leather-bound journals, all of them blank. For Wren was written on the first page of the top journal in her father's handwriting. When you're ready to write your own story. Her vision blurred. She blinked hard, forced the tears back. Not yet. Not now. She could fall apart later when she was safe, when she had the luxury of grief. She closed the crate, stood up, looked around the chamber with new eyes. Her father hadn't just built a hiding place. He'd built a home. Incomplete, yes. Unfinished, absolutely. But the bones were here. The foundation was solid. Everything else was just work. And work was something Wren understood. A sound from outside froze her in place. Footsteps, not animal, human. Careful and deliberate, the tread of boots on stone. She grabbed the lantern, killed the flame. Darkness returned like a fist closing. Beside her, Ash growled low in his chest, a sound that raised the hair on her arms. The footsteps stopped outside the entrance. A pause. Then a voice male and rough with age spoke into the silence. "James Thorne's daughter, I presume." Wren didn't move, didn't breathe. "I'm not here to hurt you, girl. I'm here because James asked me to be. 12 years ago, he made me promise. Said if his daughter ever showed up at Ridgehaven, I was to help her finish it." A light appeared in the passage. Not a flashlight. A lantern identical to the one Wren had just extinguished. The glow spilled into the chamber, revealing the figure behind it. An old man, 75 at least, with silver hair and a face weathered by decades of sun and wind. He wore a canvas coat and wool pants and boots that had seen 1,000 miles of mountain trails. In his free hand, he carried a walking stick worn smooth by use. He stopped at the threshold of the chamber, set his lantern down on the ground, raised both hands to show they were empty. "My name is Garrett Doyle," he said. "I'm the man your father trusted with his secrets. And if you'll let me, I'd like to help you finish what he started." Wren stared at him. Her hand found Ash's neck, gripped the thick fur there. The dog was still growling, but he hadn't attacked, hadn't even moved. He was waiting for her command, for her decision. "How did you know I was here?" Her voice came out rough, unused. "I didn't. Not for certain. But I've been watching that bastard stepfather of yours for 2 years, ever since your mother died. Watched him drink himself mean. Watched him corner you. I knew it was only a matter of time before you ran. And when you did, I knew there was only one place you'd go. You've been watching me, watching over you. There's a difference." Garrett lowered his hands slowly. "James was my best friend for 20 years. When he died, I made him a promise that if his daughter ever needed Ridgehaven, I'd make sure she could use it. That promise is the only thing I've got left that matters." Wren's mind raced. This man knew her father, knew about this place, knew about Frank. But that didn't make him safe, didn't make him trustworthy. Everyone wanted something. Frank wanted money. What did Garrett Doyle want? As if reading her thoughts, the old man spoke again. "I don't want anything from you, girl. I'm 75 years old. I've got emphysema and arthritis and a heart that skips every third beat. I live alone 15 miles from here because people exhaust me and solitude doesn't. Your father left you this place as a gift. I intend to honor that gift by helping you make it livable." He paused, coughed into his fist a wet, rattling sound that spoke of damaged lungs and borrowed time. "But if you want me to leave, I'll leave. This is your place now. Your decision." Wren looked at him, really looked. Saw the tremor in his hands, the hollowness in his cheeks, the way he leaned on that walking stick like it was the only thing keeping him upright. This was not a man who posed a physical threat. This was not Frank. This was someone who had known her father, who had made him a promise, who had kept that promise for 12 years, waiting for a day that might never come. "Did he suffer?" The question came out before she could stop it. "My dad." At the end, Garrett's expression softened. He was ready, made his peace, spent his last weeks making sure everything was in order. The insurance policy, the journals, this place. He thought of everything except the one thing none of us can control. Time. Garrett nodded. He wanted more of it. We all do. But he used what he had well. Built you something that would last. Something that would keep you safe. When he couldn't. Wren's throat ached. She swallowed hard against it. I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody does. Not at first. But you're smart. James always said you were smarter than you knew. And you've got his notebooks, his plans, all the blueprints and specifications he spent 2 years perfecting. With those and a little help, you can finish this place. Why would you help me? Because I owe your father a debt I can never repay. He saved my life once in a way that matters. Now I get to save his daughters. That's as close to even as I'm ever gonna get. Silence filled the chamber. Wren could hear water dripping somewhere deeper in the cave system. A soft rhythm like a heartbeat. She looked down at Ash. The dog had stopped growling. His tail gave a single tentative wag. Dogs knew things. Her father had always said that. They could smell intention the way humans smelled smoke. If Ash trusted this man, maybe she could too. Okay, she said finally. You can stay. But this is my place. My project. If I say leave, you leave. Understood. Garrett picked up his lantern. Now, first things first. We need to secure that entrance. Your stepfather is gonna come looking for you. Might take him a day, might take him a week, but he will come. And when he does, we need to make sure he can't find this place. Or if he does find it, he can't get in. Wren nodded. Practical concerns, engineering problems. This, at least, was familiar ground. The door is exposed. Anyone hiking this trail could stumble on it. Not if we camouflage it properly. Your father had plans for that. Natural facade plant growth, the works. We just never had time to implement them. Show me. Garrett smiled. It was a tired smile worn thin by age and illness, but genuine. Get some sleep first. You're dead on your feet and exhaustion makes for bad decisions. We've got time. Not much, but enough to rest. Come morning, I'll show you everything. Wren wanted to argue. Wanted to insist they start now immediately, before Frank or anyone else could find them. But Garrett was right. Her body was shutting down adrenaline crash, combining with cold and hunger, and the bone-deep weariness that came from running for your life. She nodded, watched as Garrett moved through the chamber, lighting 2 more lanterns. Their combined glow pushing back the darkness until the space felt almost warm. He pulled one of the wool blankets from the cache, spread it on the ground near the wall, added a second blanket on top. Not luxury accommodations, but it'll keep you warm. I've got a camp about half a mile from here. I'll head back tonight. Return at first light with food and better supplies. You're leaving. This is your space, remember? You need time to adjust, to think. And I need to make sure I haven't been followed. Frank might be drunk and mean, but he's not stupid. If he figures out I'm involved, things get complicated. Garrett moved toward the passage, then stopped. Looked back at her. Your father would be proud of you. Running instead of signing those papers. That took courage. It took desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. He touched 2 fingers to his forehead in a small salute. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll knock 3 times. Pause, then twice more. That's the signal. Then he was gone, his lantern light fading down the passage until Wren was alone again with Ash, and the silence, and the weight of everything her father had left behind. She moved to the entrance, found the door's interior mechanism a heavy iron bar that slid into brackets mounted in the concrete. It took all her strength to move it, but when it seated home, the sound was solid and final, locked, safe. She returned to the blankets, sat down. Ash curled up beside her, his body warm against her leg. The lantern light painted shifting shadows on the granite walls, and for the first time in hours, Wren let herself stop moving, stop planning, stop running. She pulled out the blueprint, unfolded it carefully, studied her father's lines, his notes, his careful calculations. Ridge Haven Phase 2 was labeled in the corner with detailed drawings of a ventilation system, a water pump, a food storage area, even a small bathroom with composting toilet. He'd thought of everything, or almost everything, because there in the margin of the blueprint in handwriting she recognized but had never seen before was a note that made her breath catch. Wren, if you're reading this, then Garrett found you. Trust him. He's ornery and stubborn and bad at expressing emotion. But he's the best architect I ever knew. And more importantly, he's a good man. You're going to want to do this alone. You're going to think accepting help makes you weak. You're wrong. The strongest structures are the ones built by many hands, not one. Let him help you. Learn what he can teach you. And when you're done, when Ridge Haven is complete, don't hide here forever. This place is meant to keep you safe until you're strong enough to face the world again. But facing it is the point. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. Build something beautiful. Dad, Wren read it 3 times. Then she folded the blueprint, pressed it against her chest, and let the tears come. Quiet tears. The kind that didn't need sound, because the grief was too big for noise. Ash pressed closer, his chin resting on her knee, and she buried her free hand in his fur and held on like he was the only real thing left in a world that had become unknowable. Outside, the first snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering the mountain in white, erasing footprints and hiding secrets, and giving the forest back to the silence that was its natural state. Inside Ridge Haven, in the heart of the mountain, James Thorne's daughter slept and dreamed of building something her father would be proud of. When Wren woke, the lanterns had burned down to faint glows, their wicks drowning in the last inch of oil. Ash was already awake, his ears pricked toward the entrance. She checked her phone out of habit, knowing there would be no signal this deep in the forest. The screen showed 6:47 a.m. She'd slept almost 7 hours. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more knocks. Garrett's signal. Wren stood, her body stiff and sore from sleeping on concrete. She moved to the entrance, slid back the iron bar, and pulled the door open. Morning light spilled in gray and diffuse, filtered through heavy cloud cover. Snow covered everything, 3 inches at least, still falling in fat, lazy flakes. Garrett stood outside, his coat dusted white. He carried 2 canvas packs, both looking heavy. Behind him, the forest was transformed, every branch and rock softened by snow into something almost gentle. Morning. He stepped inside, set down the packs. Brought breakfast. Coffee, too, if you've got a way to heat water. There's a camp stove in the cache. Good. Get it set up while I show you what your father built. 20 minutes later, they sat at the camping table in the main chamber, warming their hands on enamel mugs of instant coffee, while oatmeal heated on the small propane stove. Garrett had spread out additional blueprints from his pack pages Wren had never seen before. Phase 2, Garrett said, tapping the top sheet. Ventilation and climate control. Your father designed a passive air exchange system using natural convection. Cold air comes in here. He pointed to a marked location on the blueprint. Gets warmed by the interior space, rises and exits through vents disguised as natural fissures in the rock. No electricity needed, no sound, no visible signature from the outside. He really thought of everything. He had help. I consulted on the structural elements. Your father was brilliant with design, but I'd worked on military installations back in the day. Knew how to hide things in plain sight. Wren looked up sharply. Military installations. Army Corps of Engineers. Did 2 tours as a consultant in the Gulf during Desert Storm designing bunkers and fortified positions. Learned a lot about defensive architecture. How to create spaces that protect without advertising their existence. Why did you stop? Garrett's expression darkened. Saw too many of my designs used for purposes I didn't agree with. Came home. Started a civilian practice with your father. Never looked back. He pulled out another blueprint. This one showed the entrance in detail with notes about camouflage techniques and security measures. Today we need to work on this. The door is functional, but it's visible. Anyone hiking this ridge with functioning eyes could spot it. We need to change that. How? Natural materials. Your father stockpiled everything we need. We create a false rock face that matches the surrounding granite mount. It on a frame we can swing open from inside. Add some lichen, some moss, some strategic dirt. From 10 feet away, it looks like solid stone. Wren studied the design. It was elegant in its simplicity, using the mountain itself as camouflage. How long will it take? 2 days if we work steady. Less if we push hard. But we need to do it right. Sloppy work gets people killed. They spent the morning gathering materials. The lumber pile yielded aged 2x4s that had seasoned to perfect hardness. Garrett showed Wren how to construct a frame that would support the weight of the stone facade without sagging or binding. His hands shook when he worked the tremor, making simple tasks difficult. But his knowledge was sound and his instructions clear. You do the cutting, he told her, handing over a handsaw. My hands aren't steady enough anymore. But I can measure and mark. Between us, we make one competent carpenter. Wren had never built anything more complex than a birdhouse in high school shop class. But the work came naturally. Maybe it was genetic, some blueprint written into her DNA by a father who thought in 3 dimensions and saw structures where others saw empty space. Or maybe it was necessity. Either way, by noon, they had the frame assembled. The stone facade was trickier. Garrett had brought samples of the local granite from his own property pieces that matched the natural rock face. They mixed a mortar from materials in the cache, Portland cement sandwater, and began pressing the stones into place on the wooden frame. Not too perfect, Garrett cautioned. Nature is random. You want variation in color, texture, positioning. Think like erosion, not like a mason. It was slow work, tedious. But Wren found it meditative, the simple repetition of selecting a stone, applying mortar, pressing it into place. Ash watched from his position near the stove, occasionally standing to stretch or drink from the water bowl Garrett had filled. They worked through the afternoon, stopping only when the light began to fail. By then, the facade was three-quarters complete, and Wren's hands were raw despite the work gloves Garrett had provided. "Good progress," Garrett said, examining their work. "Tomorrow we finish the stonework, add the hinges and counterweights. By tomorrow night, this entrance will be invisible." They ate dinner from the MREs in the cache. Beef stew that tasted like cardboard and salt but filled the empty places in Wren's stomach. Garrett produced a thermos of real coffee from his pack, and they sat in companionable silence, too tired for conversation. Finally, Garrett spoke. "Your stepfather filed a missing person report this morning." Wren's head snapped up. "How do you know?" "I've got a scanner. Monitors county sheriff frequencies. Heard the dispatcher relay it to the state police. Frank's claiming you ran away, possibly armed, possibly dangerous." "That's a lie." "Of course it's a lie. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that law enforcement is now looking for you. They'll search the obvious places first. Your friends' houses, the school. But eventually, they'll expand the search grid. And these woods are public land. Fair game. What do? You stay invisible. You don't make fires during the day when smoke can be seen. You don't leave trash or evidence. You move like a ghost. And most importantly, you finish this place so that even if someone walks right past that entrance, they see nothing but stone." Wren nodded slowly. The coffee had gone cold in her hands. "How long can I stay here?" Garrett considered the question. "Depends on what you mean by stay. Can you survive here for months?" "Yes. Your father made sure of that." "But can you live here forever?" "No. Nobody can live in hiding forever. Eventually, you have to decide what kind of life you want. This place," he gestured at the chamber around them, "is a fortress. But fortresses are meant to protect you while you heal and plan, not to imprison you. I'm 17. I don't have choices. If I go back, Frank will force me to sign those papers. Or worse. In 3 months, you turn 18. Then the law says you're an adult. Frank loses all legal claim to you and your inheritance. 3 months, Wren. That's the timeline. Stay hidden that long and you're free. 3 months, 90 days. It seemed both impossible and achievable at the same time. "Can I really do this?" "You're already doing it. The question is, can you finish it? Can you take what your father started and make it whole?" Wren looked around the chamber, at the tools and supplies, at the blueprints spread across the table, at Ash sleeping now, his breathing steady and deep. "I don't know." "Good. That's an honest answer. Certainty is dangerous. It makes you careless. Doubt keeps you sharp." Garrett stood groaning as his knees protested. "I'm heading back to my camp. Need to check my own situation, make sure nobody's nosing around. I'll return tomorrow morning, same time, same signal. We'll finish the entrance, then start on the ventilation system." He paused at the passage entrance. "Your father told me once that architecture is the art of creating space for human life to flourish. He believed that good design could save people not just from weather or enemies, but from despair. That's what Ridge Haven is, not just a hiding place. A space where you can remember who you are when the world tries to make you forget. Then he was gone and Wren was alone again. She cleaned up the dinner mess, washed the utensils in the water they'd hauled from the stream, banked the stove for the night. The routine felt good, normal, like she was camping rather than hiding, like this was a choice rather than a necessity. Before sleep, she opened her father's project journal again, read through more entries, absorbing his process, his problem solving, his quiet determination to build something that would outlast him. One entry stopped her. February 3rd, 2013. Wren asked me today what I'm building in the garage. I told her it was a surprise. She said she doesn't like surprises. I told her someday she might. She's so much like Eleanor. Same stubborn chin, same fierce intelligence. I wonder what kind of woman she'll become. I won't be there to see it. The thought kills me. But maybe that's the point of all this work. Maybe I can't be there in person, but I can leave pieces of myself behind. Knowledge, tools, safe spaces. Maybe that's what fathers do. We build things that last longer than we do and hope our children find them when they need them most. Wren closed the journal. Her vision blurred again, but this time, she didn't fight the tears. She let them come, let them fall onto the pages of her father's words. Let the grief wash through her, like water through stone carving. New channels changing the landscape of her heart. When she finally slept, she dreamed of building, of raising walls and setting beams, and creating spaces where light fell just so and air moved in invisible currents, and every corner served a purpose. She dreamed her father was beside her, his hands guiding hers, his voice explaining load-bearing principles and stress distribution, and the sacred geometry of structures that stand against time. She dreamed she was not alone, and for that one night in the heart of the mountain her father had chosen, it was almost true. The false rock face was perfect. Wren stood 20 feet from the entrance, studying Garrett's work with critical eyes. Where the door had been obvious yesterday, a rectangle of weathered wood interrupting the natural stone, now there was nothing but granite. The facade blended seamlessly with the surrounding rock, its surface textured with the same lichen patterns, the same erosion marks, the same subtle color variations that mark stone untouched by human hands. "Can't see it, can you?" Garrett stood beside her, breathing hard from the morning's work. The tremor in his hands had worsened overnight, and twice he'd dropped tools, frustration darkening his weathered face. "It's invisible," Wren admitted. "Even knowing it's there, I can barely find the seam." "Good. That's the idea." He moved closer, pointed to a hairline crack that could have been natural weathering. "The hinges are here and here. Counterweighted system inside means you can open it from within with minimal force. From outside, it's locked solid, unless you know exactly where to push." He demonstrated, pressing 3 specific points in sequence. The facade swung inward with barely a sound, revealing the passage beyond. "Your father's design. I just executed it." Garrett let the door swing closed again. Now comes the harder part. They spent the next 2 days working on the ventilation system. Garrett's blueprints showed a network of narrow shafts running through the mountain's granite, engineered to pull fresh air into the living spaces while venting stale air out through fissures disguised as natural cracks. The principle was simple, warm air rises, but the execution was brutally difficult. Wren learned to use the pickaxe, swinging it in controlled arcs that bit into stone with each impact. Her shoulders screamed. Blisters formed on her palms, broke, reformed as calluses. Garrett worked beside her when his lungs allowed, but mostly he directed measuring angles with a clinometer and making calculations in a worn notebook. 6 inches to the left, he'd call out. You're drifting off the optimal path. Air follows the path of least resistance. We need to give it a highway, not a hiking trail. The work was hypnotic. Swing impact chips of granite flying. Swing impact the hole deepening inch by inch. Ash lay near the entrance, watching them with patient eyes, occasionally standing to investigate sounds from the forest outside. On the 3rd day, Wren broke through. The pickaxe punched into empty space and a draft of cold air rushed past her face. They'd connected to a natural fissure in the rock, exactly where Garrett's calculations had predicted. That's the intake, Garrett said, satisfaction clear in his voice. Now we do the exhaust. But that afternoon, everything changed. Wren was hauling debris from the ventilation shaft when Ash suddenly stood, his body rigid, ears forward. A low growl started deep in his chest. Garrett caught her eye, put a finger to his lips. They both froze. Voices. Male. Multiple. Coming from the direction of the main trail, maybe 100 yards away. Searched this whole damn ridge twice now. Girls long gone or dead or both. Sheriff says keep looking. Missing kid, possible foul play. We don't stop till we find something. Search party. Wren's heart hammered against her ribs. Garrett moved silently to the entrance, peered through a tiny gap in the false facade. Wren joined him, pressing her eye to another crack. She could see them through the trees. 3 men in orange vests spread out in a search line, moving methodically through the forest. One carried a long pole for probing underbrush. Another had a handheld radio crackling with static. They were 70 yards away. 60. 50. The man with the radio stopped, spoke into it. Sector 7 clear so far. Moving to the ridge outcrop now. They were coming directly toward Ridge Haven. Garrett's hand found Wren's shoulder, squeezed once. Stay quiet. Stay still. The facade will hold. The searchers approached. 40 yards. 30. Wren could see their faces now. Volunteers, probably. Local men doing their civic duty, searching for a missing girl who didn't want to be found. 20 yards. One of them stopped, looking directly at the rock face that hid the entrance. Wren held her breath. Ash pressed against her leg. Silent now, every muscle coiled. The man took a step closer, then another. He was 10 feet away, close enough that Wren could hear his breathing. He pulled out a cell phone, checked the screen, frowned. No signal this deep in the mountains. He looked up, scanned the rock face one more time. Then he turned away. Nothing here but stone and snow, he called to his companions. Let's move on. They continued past, their voices fading into the forest. Wren and Garrett stood frozen for another 5 minutes, listening until even the faintest sound of the search party had disappeared. Only then did Garrett exhale. Too close. His voice was rough. They'll be back. Different teams, different days, but they'll keep searching. Frank's not gonna let this go. what do I do? What you've been doing. Stay invisible. Finish the work. And pray that winter keeps people out of these woods. He looked at her, his expression grave. But we need to accelerate the timeline. Can't spend weeks perfecting every detail. We need this place functional, defensible within days, not months. That night after Garrett left for his camp, Wren couldn't sleep. She sat at the table with her father's blueprints, studying them by lantern light, trying to understand what defensible meant in architectural terms. The answer was in the Phase 3 drawings. Her father had designed Ridgehaven with layers. The main chamber was just the beginning. Beyond it, connected by the narrow passage, the natural cave system extended deeper into the mountain. James Thorne had mapped it all, noting choke points and defensible positions, places where one person could hold ground against many. At the very back of the cave system, he'd marked a location with a red circle. Emergency exit. Coordinates and compass bearing noted. It led to a different part of the mountain, entirely emerging in a ravine half a mile from the main entrance. An escape route. Wren traced the path with her finger. Her father had thought of everything. Not just how to survive in this place, but how to escape it if survival became impossible. She wondered what scenarios he'd imagined, what threats he'd calculated and prepared for. Had he known even then that Frank Callahan would become dangerous? Or had he simply understood that the world was full of dangers and the best defense was preparation? The next morning, Garrett arrived with news. Frank's escalating. Put up a reward. $5,000 for information leading to your recovery. He set down his pack, pulled out a crumpled flyer. These are posted in every store and gas station within 50 miles. Wren took the flyer. Her own face stared back at her, a school photo from last year. The text below read, "Missing. Wren Thorne, 17. Endangered runaway. Reward for safe return." Endangered, she read aloud. He's making it sound like I'm in danger from someone else. Classic manipulation. He's the concerned father figure desperate to save his stepdaughter from whatever threat she's running toward. Garrett's expression was grim. Makes him look sympathetic. Makes you look unstable. People will believe it. Some will, but not everyone. There's a sheriff's deputy, Coulter Hayes, been asking questions around town. Seems skeptical of Frank's story. Asked the bartender at Murphy's if Frank had seemed worried before you disappeared or angry. And bartender said angry. Said Frank had been drinking heavy, talking about money problems, complaining about ungrateful kids who don't understand what he sacrificed. Garrett managed a thin smile. Not exactly the concerned father narrative. Wren studied the flyer again. $5,000. That was real money in these mountains. Enough to tempt people. Enough to make strangers look twice at any teenage girl they passed. "I can't leave here," she said. "Not until I'm 18. Not until the money's legally mine and Frank can't touch it." 11 weeks, Garrett confirmed. "You can do 11 weeks, but we need to finish this place first. Make it truly secure, starting with water." The water system was the next priority. James Thorne's design called for a hand pump connected to the water table 35 feet below the cave floor. The well shaft was already drilled. He'd completed that before his death. But the pump mechanism had never been installed. Garrett showed Wren how to assemble it. Cast iron cylinder leather gaskets, a long handle that would require significant force to operate. They lowered the pump assembly into the shaft, foot by foot, connecting sections of pipe as they went. Your father drilled this by hand, Garrett said as they worked. Took him 6 weeks. He'd come out here every Saturday, work until dark, then hike back to his truck and drive home. Eleanor thought he was surveying sites for potential projects. He let her think that. He lied to her. He protected her. There's a difference. If she'd known about Ridge Haven, she would have worried. Would have tried to stop him or insisted on helping or told someone. The fewer people who knew, the safer the secret. Did you lie to your wife, too? Garrett's hands stilled on the pipe. I never married. Came close once, long time ago. But I was married to the work instead. Architecture was my mistress and my religion. By the time I realized what I'd given up, it was too late to get it back. They worked in silence after that. The only sound, the clink of metal on metal, and Garrett's labored breathing. When the pump was finally installed, Wren gripped the handle and pulled. Nothing happened. She pulled harder, throwing her weight into it. The handle resisted, then gave. She pumped it again. Again. On the 5th stroke, water coughed up through the spout, brown with sediment at first, then running clear and cold. "We have water," she whispered. Garrett smiled. "We have water. Fill every container in this place. Water is life. Everything else is just details." Over the next week, Ridge Haven transformed. Wren worked from dawn until exhaustion claimed her learning skills she'd never imagined needing. Garrett taught her to use a level and square to measure twice, and cut once to understand that precision in small things created stability in large ones. They built a food storage system, using the natural cool of the cave to preserve supplies. They installed a composting toilet in a small alcove, vented to the outside, through another carefully disguised shaft. They ran a test of the ventilation system, burning paper in the main chamber, and watching the smoke get pulled smoothly up and out through the exhaust ports. The place was becoming livable. More than livable. It was becoming a home. But Garrett was declining. The tremor in his hands spread to his arms. His coughing fits became more frequent, more violent, leaving him hunched over and gasping. Twice he had to stop work entirely, sitting against the wall, with his eyes closed while his breathing stabilized. "You need a doctor," Wren said after the second episode. "I need to finish this place." His voice was rough as gravel. "Doctors can't do anything I don't already know. Emphysema. Decades of breathing stone dust and cigarette smoke. The damage is done. I've got months, maybe a year. But I've got enough to see this through." "Garrett, no." He cut her off. "This is the last thing I build. The last project I see to completion. Let me have that. Let me finish what James started." So they continued. But Wren took on more of the physical work, relegating Garrett to the role of supervisor and teacher. He didn't argue. Some battles, his silence seemed to say, weren't worth the breath. On the 9th day, Ash alerted again. But this time the threat wasn't searchers. Wren was outside 50 yards from the entrance gathering firewood when she heard it. An engine. Not the distant rumble of traffic on the highway miles away, but close. Very close. A vehicle struggling up the old logging road that skirted the base of the ridge. She dropped the wood and ran. Burst through the concealed entrance to find Garrett already at the table, the rifle from the cache lying in front of him. Company. he said quietly. Stay inside. Let me handle it. Who is it? Don't know yet, but whoever's driving that truck knows these woods. The logging road's been closed for 5 years. Only locals know it's still passable. Through the ventilation shafts, they could hear the engine growing louder, then stopping. A door slammed. Footsteps crunching through snow. Then a voice calling out. Male. Not Frank. Older. Garrett Doyle, I know you're up here somewhere. We need to talk. Garrett's expression darkened. He picked up the rifle, checked that it was loaded, then moved toward the entrance. Wren grabbed his arm. Who is that? Could be trouble. Could be help. He gently removed her hand. Stay here. Keep Ash quiet. If things go bad, you take that dog and you run for the emergency exit. Don't look back. He slipped out through the entrance before she could respond. Wren pressed her eye to a crack in the facade. The view was limited, but she could see Garrett emerge into the clearing, the rifle held loosely in his hands. Non-threatening but ready. A man stood 30 feet away, late 50s, weathered face, wearing a sheriff's department jacket and holding a thermos. He didn't look armed, but his stance suggested he knew how to handle himself. Coulter Hayes, Garrett said. Wasn't expecting a house call. Sheriff Hayes now, the man corrected. And I'm not here officially. This is a conversation between two men who've lived in these mountains long enough to know when something doesn't smell right. That's so. Frank Callahan's story is bullshit, Garrett. We both know it. Girl runs away in the middle of a snowstorm with no supplies, no plan, supposedly just vanishes into the woods. More likely she's hiding. Question is where and with who? Garrett said nothing. Hayes took a step closer. I knew James Thorne. Good man. Honest. We played poker together for 10 years before the cancer took him. He talked about you sometimes. His partner. Said you were the best architect he'd ever worked with. Said if anything ever happened to him, you'd look after his interests. James has been dead 12 years. His daughter hasn't. Hayes unscrewed the thermos, poured coffee into the lid, offered it to Garrett. It's cold out here, and I'm not your enemy. Garrett didn't take the coffee. What do you want, Coulter? I want to know if Wren Thorne is safe, not where she is, not how to find her, just whether she's alive, fed warm, and protected from the man who's been terrorizing her for 2 years. Why would I know anything about that? Because James Thorne made you executor of a trust fund set up for his daughter. Did you think I wouldn't check $50,000 accessible when she turns 18 or in case of emergency as determined by the executor? That's you, Garrett. You're the safeguard James put in place. Wren's breath caught. She hadn't known about any trust fund. Her father had left her more than just Ridge Haven. He'd left her options. The insurance money was $250,000. Combined with the trust, she'd have $300,000 total. The trust exists, Garrett admitted, but I haven't heard from the girl. Don't insult my intelligence. I've been watching Frank, watching his movements, his behavior. Man's desperate, violent desperate. The kind of desperate that ends with someone getting hurt or worse. If Wren is out here, if you're helping her, I need to know she's not in danger from him, or from you. You wearing a wire, Coulter? Hayes opened his jacket, showed his empty shirt. No wire, no backup, no official capacity. I'm here because James was my friend, and because I've got prostate cancer eating me from the inside out. 6 months, maybe less. I don't have time for politics or covering my ass. I just want to know if I need to protect a 17-year-old girl from the man who's supposed to be protecting her. Silence stretched between them. Wren watched Garrett's shoulders rise and fall as he calculated the risk, weighed the variables. Finally, he spoke. Hypothetically, if I knew where a teenage girl was hiding from an abusive stepfather, and if that girl was safe and warm and learning to take care of herself, would you interfere? Hypothetically, Hayes smiled grimly. I'd make sure Frank Callahan didn't get within 10 miles of wherever this hypothetical girl was hiding. I'd slow walk the investigation, lose some paperwork. Make sure the search teams looked in all the wrong places. And when she turns 18, she's an adult, free to go where she wants, do what she wants, including filing charges against Frank for assault, theft, coercion, whatever applies. Hayes poured more coffee into the lid. Hypothetically, of course. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once. Sharp. Hypothetically, if such a situation existed, the girl in question would be grateful for any time bought. 11 weeks until her birthday. After that, she's beyond Frank's reach. 11 weeks. I can work with that. Hayes raised the coffee in a small salute. Take care of yourself, Garrett, and take care of any hypothetical young women who might need your help. He walked back to his truck, got in, and drove away. Garrett stood in the clearing until the engine sound faded completely, then returned to the entrance. Inside, Wren waited. We can trust him, Garrett said before she could ask. He's dying, which makes him honest. And he loved your father, which makes him loyal. But it also means we're on the clock. If Coulter can figure out you're out here, others can too. He said something about a trust fund. 50,000. Your father set it up as a backup. If something happened to your mother, if you needed resources, I could release the funds. I was going to tell you, but we've been focused on survival, not finances. Wren did the math in her head. Insurance, $250,000. Trust, $50,000. Total, $300,000. Enough to start a life. Go to college. Build something. If she survived the next 11 weeks, the close call with Hayes made them both paranoid. They stopped working during daylight hours, restricting activity to dawn and dusk, when the forest was dim and visibility poor. Garrett brought supplies in small quantities, nothing that would suggest more than one man camping in the woods. They burned only dry wood that produced minimal smoke, and only in a small fire pit Garrett had constructed using the Dakota firehole method, a design that channeled smoke through underground passages, dispersing it invisibly. Ridge Haven became a tomb they lived in, sealed away from the world. Wren felt it starting to affect her mind. The isolation, the constant vigilance, the lack of sunlight. She would wake in the night disoriented, unsure if it was midnight or noon, if she'd been asleep for hours or minutes. The cave's perpetual dimness created a timeless quality that was both comforting and maddening. Garrett noticed. You need to go outside, he said one evening. Not far, not for long. But you need to see the sky, breathe air that hasn't been filtered through stone. Humans weren't meant to live underground. It's not safe. It's necessary. 5 minutes at dawn. That's all. Just step outside the entrance, let the morning light hit your face. It'll make a difference. So she started doing it. Every morning, just before sunrise, she would slip out through the entrance and stand in the clearing watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pale blue. Ash would stand beside her, his nose testing the wind alert but calm. Those 5 minutes became sacred. The only time she felt truly human, truly alive, instead of like something hiding in the dark, waiting for threat to pass. On the 15th day, everything changed again. Wren was outside for her morning ritual when Ash suddenly went rigid. His hackles rose and that low growl started deep in his chest. But he wasn't looking toward the trail. He was looking upslope toward the denser forest above the ridge. Movement. A figure moving through the trees with practiced stealth. Not a searcher. Not a hiker. Someone who knew how to move silently through the woods, who understood that noise traveled, and visibility was a weakness. Wren's hand found Ash's collar. She pulled him slowly backward toward the entrance, not running, not making sudden movements that would catch the eye. The figure stopped, turned in her direction. In the growing light, Wren could see him clearly now. Mid-30s, lean and weathered, dressed in woodland camouflage. He carried something over his shoulder. At first she thought it was a rifle, but the shape was wrong. Too bulky. Too irregular. A snare line, loaded with dead rabbits. The poacher from her first night. The man who set traps and hunted in the national forest where hunting was illegal. Who knew these mountains as well as anyone alive? Their eyes met across 50 yards of snow-covered ground. For a moment, neither moved. Wren felt her heart hammering, felt Ash's muscles coiled under her hand, ready to attack or defend on her command. The man lifted one hand. Not a wave, not a threat. Just acknowledgement. I see you. You see me. We both have secrets. Then he turned and melted back into the forest as silently as he'd appeared. Wren stood frozen for another full minute before she moved. Backed into the entrance. Sealed the door. Found Garrett in the main chamber and told him what had happened. His face went pale. Cole Brenner. Shit. I was afraid of this. You know him. Everyone in these mountains knows Cole. Best tracker in 3 counties. Lives completely off-grid, poaches to survive, doesn't bother anyone and doesn't want to be bothered. But he's got a reputation. If someone needs finding, Cole's the man they hire. The implication hit Wren like cold water. You think Frank hired him. I think Frank can't afford to hire him. Cole charges serious money, but someone might have. The reward's up to $10,000 now. That's enough to interest someone like Cole. He saw me. He saw you. Question is, what's he going to do about it? They spent the day in tense silence, waiting for boots to arrive, for voices to call out, for the secret to break open. But nothing came. No searches, no police, no Frank. Just silence. That night, Wren found something. She was organizing the supply cache, rotating stock checking for damage or spoilage, when she noticed something odd about the back wall of the storage alcove. The stone there looked different. Newer somehow. Less weathered. She ran her hand over it. Not stone. Mortar. Covering something. She grabbed a pry bar, worked it into a seam, and pulled. The mortar cracked, fell away in chunks. Behind it, a shallow cavity. And inside the cavity, a green metal box. Military surplus, like the crates, but smaller, personal-sized. Wren pulled it out, brushed away the dust. No lock, just a simple latch. She opened it. Inside, lying on top of folded papers, was a photograph. Her father and a younger Garrett standing in front of a half-built structure. Both men were smiling, covered in concrete dust, looking proud and tired and alive. Beneath the photo documents, legal papers, the deed to this land purchased under a shell corporation, permits and surveys and geological reports. And at the bottom, a letter addressed to her. Wren, if you found this, you've gone deeper than I hoped you'd need to. This box contains the legal framework that makes Ridgehaven yours. The land, the mineral rights, everything. I bought this property in secret through a company Garrett helped me set up. As far as the government knows, it's owned by Blue Ridge Consulting, LLC, but the company is owned by a trust, and the trust beneficiary is you. This is your land, your mountain, your refuge. If you're reading this, it means things went wrong. It means Frank or someone like him became the threat I feared. I'm sorry I wasn't there to stop it. Sorry I couldn't protect you the way a father should, but I did what I could. I built you a fortress. I gave you tools. I left you this land and the knowledge to use it. The rest is up to you. You're stronger than you know, braver than you think. You're my daughter, and that means you're capable of things that would terrify lesser people. Build something beautiful, Wren. Not just here in this cave, but in your life. Build something that matters. I love you. Dad. Wren read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, placed it back in the box with the other documents, and carried the box to her sleeping area. She owned this land. Ridgehaven wasn't just a hiding place. It was hers. Legally, permanently hers. For the first time since running into the forest, she felt something other than fear. She felt power. The next morning, Cole Brenner came back. Wren was inside when she heard the knock. Not Garrett's signal. Just 3 steady raps on the stone facade. She grabbed the rifle, checked the load, and moved to the entrance. Through the crack, she could see him standing in the clearing, hands visible and empty. "Wren Thorne," he called out. "I'm not here to turn you in. I'm here to make a deal." Garrett appeared from deeper in the cave, his own rifle in hand. He looked at Wren, raised an eyebrow. "Your call." Wren took a breath, opened the entrance. Cole Brenner looked older up close, weathered by sun and wind into something hard and permanent like the stones themselves. He wore the same camouflage, but no weapons that she could see. "Talk fast," Wren said, "and don't come any closer. Frank Callahan hired me 3 days ago. Offered me $20,000 to find you, bring you back alive." Cole's voice was flat matter-of-fact. "I found you this morning. Could have called him right then, collected the bounty. But I didn't. Why not? Because I watched you. Watched how you moved. Saw the dog. Saw the way you checked your surroundings. Saw the discipline. That's not some spoiled kid running away from chores. That's someone running from something real. Something dangerous." He paused, his gaze steady. "I know Frank Callahan. Drunk. Mean. The kind of mean that gets worse behind closed doors. I'm not in the business of delivering teenage girls back to men like that, no matter how much they pay. Then what do you want? I want you to stay hidden. Keep your head down. And in return, I'll tell Frank I searched this whole ridge system and found nothing. I'll feed him bad information. Send him looking in the wrong places. Buy you time. Why would you do that? Cole's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I had a daughter once, long time ago. Her mother took her when she was 5, moved to California, never let me see her again. She'd be about your age now. I like to think if she was in trouble, if she was hiding from someone dangerous, someone would help her. Even if that someone was a stranger. Wren studied his face, looking for deception. Found only weariness and something that might have been regret. What do you want in return? Nothing. Just don't get caught. Don't make my lie obvious. And when you're 18, when you're safe, you remember that not everyone in this world is an enemy. He stepped back, preparing to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Frank's getting desperate. Started talking to some people from out of town. Men who don't ask questions and don't care about laws. If he brings them up here, I can't help you. You understand I can misdirect searchers and delay police, but if he brings muscle, you need to be ready to disappear. I understand. Cole nodded, turned to go, then looked back one more time. Your father built something good here. I've been hunting these woods for 20 years, walked past this spot 100 times, never saw it, until I watched you come out of solid stone. That takes skill. Respect the gift he gave you. Then he was gone, moving through the forest like smoke, leaving no trace. Garrett lowered his rifle. Well, that was unexpected. Can we trust him? Can we afford not to? Garrett leaned against the wall, suddenly looking every one of his 75 years. We're running out of allies, Wren. Coulter can only do so much. I'm getting weaker every day. If Cole Brenner's willing to buy you time, we take it. Wren nodded slowly. Around them, Ridge Haven stood silent and secure, a fortress carved from stone and her father's foresight. But even fortresses could fall if the siege lasted long enough. She had 11 weeks to turn 18. 77 days until she was legally free of Frank, legally in control of her inheritance, legally able to choose her own path. 77 days to finish what her father started, starting now. The weather turned vicious on the 53rd day. Wren woke to a sound she didn't immediately recognize, a deep bass rumble that seemed to come from the mountain itself. Then she understood. Wind. Not the gentle breezes that whispered through the pines, but something massive and violent. The kind of wind that bent trees and tore shingles from roofs and reminded humans exactly how small they were. Garrett was already awake, sitting at the table with a battery-powered radio pressed to his ear. His face was grave in the lantern light. Blizzard, he said without preamble. The real kind. National Weather Service is calling it a once-in-a-decade storm. 2 feet of snow minimum. Winds up to 60 miles per hour, temperatures dropping to 0. It's gonna hit in about 6 hours. Wren moved to the entrance, cracked it open just enough to feel the air outside. The temperature had already dropped 20 degrees since yesterday. The sky was the color of old bruises, heavy and swollen with the weight of coming snow. We're secure here, she said. We've got food, water, heat. We can wait it out. We can. Garrett set down the radio. But anyone caught outside can't. This storm's gonna kill people, Wren. Hikers who didn't check the weather. Hunters who thought they had time to get back. Homeless folk camping in the woods. That's not our problem. Maybe not. But it's going to bring searchers, rescue teams, park rangers. After the storm passes, these mountains will be crawling with people looking for bodies. He coughed a wet, rattling sound. We need to be invisible. More invisible than we've been. They spent the morning preparing. Wren hauled every container they had to the water pump and filled them to capacity. Garrett checked and double-checked the ventilation system, making sure the intake vents wouldn't clog with snow. They organized the food stores, rationed fuel for the camp stove, tested the backup lanterns. By noon, the first snowflakes began to fall. Within an hour, the world outside had disappeared into white. Wren had never seen snow like this. It didn't fall so much as fly horizontally, driven by wind that howled like something alive and hungry. Through the small observation port they'd installed in the entrance, she could see trees bending at impossible angles, branches snapping with sounds like gunshots. The temperature inside Ridge Haven remained stable, 45 degrees cool, but manageable with the wool blankets and the small amount of heat from the camp stove. The ventilation system worked perfectly, pulling fresh air in and venting the stale air out without creating drafts or letting the cold penetrate. Her father had designed this place to withstand exactly this scenario. Once again, his foresight was saving her life. They settled in to wait. Garrett read from one of the books in the cache a field guide to Appalachian flora. Wren worked on the journal her father had left her, finally beginning to write her own story. Ash slept near the stove, content and warm. It was almost peaceful. Then on the second day of the storm, they heard the voice, faint at first, nearly lost in the wind. A man's voice calling out. Not words, just raw sound. Human sound, the kind of noise people make when they're beyond words and running on pure survival instinct. Garrett heard it too. He looked at Wren, and she saw the question in his eyes. No, she said immediately. We can't. We open that door, we risk exposure. We risk someone seeing this place. Someone's dying out there. Someone's always dying somewhere. That doesn't make it my responsibility. But even as she said it, she was moving toward the entrance, moving toward the observation port, looking out into the white chaos. She couldn't see anything, just snow and wind and more snow. But the voice came again, closer now. Whoever it was, they were heading directly toward the ridge, toward Ridge Haven, drawn perhaps by the shelter of the rock face or simple blind luck. We have to help, Garrett said quietly. Your father would have helped. My father's dead because he helped. He married my mother, tried to help her recover from losing her first husband. Then he took in Frank because Mom asked him to try to help a broken veteran find purpose. And where did that get him dead at 35, leaving his daughter to clean up the mess? The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. She'd never said it out loud before, never let herself think it. But it was true. Her father's generosity, his fundamental belief in helping people, had led directly to the situation she was in now. Maybe, Garrett said. Or maybe he understood that being human means helping even when it's not convenient, even when it's dangerous. The voice came again, weaker this time. Whoever it was, they were running out of time. Wren closed her eyes, counted to 10, opened them. If we do this, we do it smart. We bring them inside, we keep them unconscious or restrained until the storm passes, and then we get them out of here with no memory of where they were. Agreed. Agreed. She grabbed the rope from the supply cache, tied one end around her waist and the other around the support beam nearest the entrance. Pulled on her coat, her gloves wrapped a scarf around her face. Garrett handed her the rifle. "Just in case," he said. Wren nodded. "Open the entrance." The wind hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath, driving snow into her eyes hard enough to sting. The world was a maelstrom of white and cold and violence. She could barely see 10 feet in front of her face. But she could hear the voice. Off to her left, maybe 20 yards away. She pushed forward, one hand on the rope, the other holding the rifle. Each step was a battle against the wind, against the knee-deep snow that had already accumulated. Ash tried to follow, but she commanded him back. If she got lost, he needed to lead Garrett to her. 15 yards, 10, 5. A shape materialized out of the white. A man on his knees, face down in the snow. He wasn't moving anymore, wasn't calling out. Wren grabbed him, rolled him over. Mid-30s, weathered face. His lips were blue. His face pale as death. Ice had formed in his eyebrows and beard. Hypothermia. Advanced stages. She checked for a pulse. Found one barely. Thready and slow. No time for questions. No time for caution. She grabbed him under the arms and pulled. He was dead weight easily, 170, all of it, limp and uncooperative. The wind fought her for every inch, trying to push them both down, trying to bury them under the accumulating snow. But Wren had spent 8 weeks hauling rock and timber. She'd built muscles she didn't know existed, developed a core strength that came from swinging pickaxes and lifting concrete bags. She pulled and the man moved. 5 yards, 10, 15. The entrance appeared out of the white like salvation. Garrett was there, reaching out, grabbing the man's legs. Together they hauled him inside, slammed the door shut behind them, cutting off the wind like a knife. Silence. Relative silence. The wind still howled outside, but muted now, distant. The man lay on the concrete floor, not moving. Wren knelt beside him, checking vitals. Pulse still there. Breathing shallow, but present. Core temperature dangerously low. "We need to warm him slowly," Garrett said, already pulling blankets from the cache. "Too fast, and we shock his system, could stop his heart. Get his wet clothes off." They worked together, stripping away frozen layers. The man's skin was pale and cold to the touch, like touching marble. Underneath his coat, Wren found a wallet. She opened it. Driver's license. Cole Brenner. Her blood went cold. Garrett. He looked up from positioning the blankets, saw the license. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Shit. What's he doing out in this? He knows these woods. He wouldn't get caught in a storm like this unless he was looking for someone. For you. Trying to warn you about something. Garrett finished the thought. They got Cole wrapped in dry blankets, positioned near the stove, but not too close. Wren elevated his feet, trying to get blood flow back to his core. His breathing was improving slightly, the deathly pale color starting to recede from his lips. But he was still unconscious, still vulnerable. And now he was inside Ridge Haven, the one place in the world that was supposed to stay secret. "When he wakes up, we have a problem," Wren said. "When he wakes up, we deal with it." Garrett was checking Cole's extremities, looking for frostbite. "Right now, we keep him alive. Everything else is secondary." It took 4 hours for Cole to regain consciousness. 4 hours during which Wren paced the chamber like a caged animal rifle never far from her hand, while Garrett monitored the man's vitals with the calm detachment of someone who'd seen enough of life to not be rattled by complications. When Cole's eyes finally opened, they were confused, unfocused. He tried to sit up, failed, fell back against the blankets. "Easy," Garrett said. "You were about an hour from dead when we found you. Don't rush the recovery." Cole's gaze sharpened, taking in his surroundings. The cave walls, the lanterns, the supplies. Wren standing against the far wall with the rifle held across her body. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "The girl," he said, his voice a rasp. "Frank's stepdaughter." "Wren," she corrected. "My name is Wren Thorne, and you're in my home, the home my father built, the home you're going to forget about as soon as you're strong enough to walk out of here." Cole managed a weak smile. "Understood, though I have to say this is some impressive work. Your father was one hell of an engineer." "What were you doing out there?" Garrett asked. "You're too smart to get caught in a storm like this by accident." Cole's smile faded. "I was looking for you, actually. For Wren. Needed to warn her." "Warn me about what?" "Frank hired new people. Not searchers. Not trackers." Cole paused, gathering strength. "Mercenaries. 2 of them. Ex-military from what I could tell. Showed up in town 4 days ago, started asking questions. Quiet questions. The kind that don't go through official channels." Wren's grip tightened on the rifle. "He's that desperate?" "He's broke. I did some checking. Frank's into a loan shark for $80,000. Payment was due last week. He doesn't have it. But he's been telling people he's about to come into money. Big money. $250,000 in insurance payout from his stepdaughter. I'm not signing anything. I know, which is why he's moved past asking." Cole tried to sit up again, managed it this time with Garrett's help. "These men he hired, they're not here to find you and bring you home. They're here to make you sign that paperwork. By whatever means necessary." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Where are they now?" Garrett asked. "Holed up in town, waiting out the storm. But when this clears, they'll start searching. And these aren't volunteers with day jobs. These are professionals. They'll search methodically, thoroughly, with equipment and training." Wren moved to the observation port, looked out at the continuing blizzard. "How long do we have?" "Storm's supposed to break tomorrow afternoon. Give them a day to prepare, another day to get up here. Call it 72 hours. Maybe less if they're really motivated. 72 hours, 3 days. And Wren was still 6 weeks away from turning 18. "We need to leave," she said. "Use the emergency exit. Get to a town, find somewhere else to hide until my birthday." "You won't make it." Garrett's voice was flat. "Even after the storm clears, the snow will be hip-deep in places. Temperature's gonna stay below freezing for at least a week. You try to hike out of here, you'll freeze or break a leg or get lost. This place is your best chance. Then we defend it. Against 2 trained mercenaries." Garrett shook his head. Wren, I'm a 75-year-old man with emphysema. You're a 17-year-old girl who's been living in a cave for 2 months. Cole here can barely stand. We're not exactly a tactical force. Then what do you suggest? Silence. The wind howled outside, indifferent to their problem. Cole spoke up, his voice stronger now. Your father built this place with defense in mind, didn't he? I saw the entrance, the camouflage. This whole setup screams military thinking. He designed it with multiple layers, Wren admitted. Concealment first. If that fails, fortification. If that fails, escape. Show me. Against her better judgment, Wren retrieved her father's blueprints, spread them on the table. Cole studied them with professional interest, his finger tracing the various elements. This is good. Really good. The false entrance. The narrow passage that creates a choke point. The secondary chamber with its own ventilation. He looked up. But it's incomplete. Your father died before he could finish the defensive elements. What defensive elements? Cole tapped a section of the blueprint that Wren had always assumed was just notation. But looking at it now, she saw what he saw. Plans for a collapsible section of the passage. A deliberate weak point that could be triggered to block access to the inner chamber. A deadfall trap, Cole said. Simple but effective. Anyone trying to force their way through the passage gets buried under a couple of tons of rock. Permanently solves the problem. That's murder. That's defense. There's a difference. Cole looked at her steadily. These men Frank hired, they're not going to ask nicely. They're not going to respect your rights or your wishes. They're going to force you to sign whatever Frank wants, and then make you disappear so you can't recant. You understand what I'm saying? Wren understood. The cold reality of it settled in her stomach like a stone. Can we even build something like this in 3 days? Garrett was studying the blueprints, now his architect's eye calculating angles and loads. The design is sound. Your father spec'd everything out. We have the materials, there's enough loose rock in the cave system, but the engineering is delicate. We'd need to create a support system that holds the weight until triggered, then fails completely on command. Can you do it? I can design it, but I can't build it. My hands... He held them up, showing the tremor that had gotten worse over the weeks. I can't do precision work anymore. I can build, Cole said. Military engineering. I've rigged demo charges, built fortifications, done field repair on everything from bridges to bunkers. Point me at the problem and give me the tools. Wren looked from Cole to Garrett. 2 men both damaged in different ways. Both offering to help. Both potentially signing their own death warrants if this went wrong. Why? She asked Cole. Why help me? You don't know me. You owe me nothing. Maybe I'm tired of watching men like Frank win. Cole's expression was hard. Maybe I'm tired of seeing power and money and violence get what they want, while good people hide and hope and lose anyway. Your father built you a fortress. Let's make sure it actually protects you. The decision felt massive, irrevocable. Once they started down this path, there was no turning back. They would either succeed in defending Ridge Haven, or they would fail. And failure meant signing over her inheritance, or worse. But what was the alternative? Run and risk freezing surrender, and risk whatever Frank had planned. Okay, Wren said. We build the trap. but we do it right. If someone gets hurt, it's because they chose to force their way in, not because we went looking for a fight. Agreed. Garrett was already making notes on the blueprint, refining the design. Cole, you rest today. Get your strength back. Tomorrow we start construction. That night, Wren couldn't sleep. She lay on her blankets, staring at the stone ceiling, thinking about her father, wondering if he'd ever imagined this scenario. If he'd known when he drew those blueprints that his daughter might actually need to defend this place with lethal force. Probably he had. James Thorne thought of everything. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to Garrett shaking her shoulder gently. Morning light was filtering through the observation port, pale and cold, but the wind had stopped. The storm was passing. It's time, Garrett said. They worked for 18 hours straight. Cole, still weak but functional, directed the operation with military precision. Garrett refined the calculations, adjusting for rock density and structural loads. And Wren did the physical labor, hauling stones, positioning supports, building the infrastructure that would either save her life or end someone else's. The trap was elegant in its brutality. A section of the passage ceiling, approximately 8 feet long, was supported by a wooden framework that looked permanent, but was actually held in place by a single iron pin. Remove the pin and the framework would collapse, dropping several tons of granite into the passage and sealing it completely. The pin could be pulled from inside the inner chamber, using a rope system that ran along the wall. One hard pull and anyone in the passage would be crushed. "We need to test it," Cole said when the construction was complete. "How do you test a death trap without killing anyone?" Wren asked. "We build a small-scale model. Same principles, smaller rocks. See if the physics work." They spent another 6 hours building a miniature version of the trap in a side chamber, using stones they could actually lift. When Cole pulled the test pin, the structure collapsed exactly as designed. Fast, complete, irreversible. It would work. "Now we prepare the rest," Garrett said. He was exhausted, his face gray, his breathing labored, but his mind was still sharp. "We assume they get past the entrance. Assume they make it to the passage. What then?" "Then I give them a choice," Wren said. "I talk to them, explain that I'm not going back. Offer them money, I'll sign over some of the trust fund to leave me alone. Give them an out that doesn't involve violence. And if they don't take it, then I pull the pin." Cole nodded slowly. "You understand what that means. You'll be killing them. Doesn't matter that they threatened you first. Doesn't matter that it's self-defense. You'll carry that weight forever." "I know." Wren met his eyes. "But I'll carry it alive and free. Better than the alternative." The third day arrived with brutal clarity. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind a landscape transformed. Through the observation port, Wren could see a world of pure white snow, piled in drifts 8 feet high in places, trees bent under the weight. The entire mountain smoothed and softened into something almost beautiful. But beauty was dangerous. The snow would slow anyone trying to reach them, but it wouldn't stop professionals. It would just make them more careful. They spent the day in final preparations. Cole showed Wren how to properly handle the rifle, how to aim for center mass, how to control her breathing and squeeze the trigger, rather than pull. Garrett went over the escape route one more time, making sure she knew exactly how to reach the emergency exit if everything went wrong. and Wren prepared herself mentally for what might be coming. She'd never hurt anyone in her life, never even been in a real fight. The idea of pulling that pin, of deliberately dropping tons of rock on human beings, made her feel sick. But the idea of being dragged back to Frank, of being forced to sign away her future, of disappearing into whatever fate he had planned, was worse. Sometimes, her father had written in one of his journals, "The right choice is the one that lets you live with yourself afterward. Not the easy choice, the right one." She hoped she could tell the difference. That night, Ash alerted. The dog had been restless all evening, pacing near the entrance, occasionally growling at sounds only he could hear. Now he stood rigid, facing the door, his hackles raised in a ridge along his spine. Wren grabbed the rifle. Garrett and Cole took positions in the inner chamber, ready to seal themselves in if necessary. Through the observation port, Wren saw lights, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Two of them moving methodically through the forest, searching. The mercenaries had arrived. She watched them work. They moved with the precision of professionals searching in a grid pattern, missing nothing. One was tall and broad, the other shorter and wiry. Both carried weapons rifles slung over their shoulders, sidearms visible at their hips. They weren't here to talk. The tall one stopped studying the rock face, pulled out some kind of device, swept it along the stone. Thermal imaging, Wren realized. Looking for heat signatures. But Ridgehaven's ventilation system dispersed heat gradually over multiple vents. There was no single hot spot to detect. Her father's design held. The men conferred briefly, then moved on, continuing their search pattern. Wren watched them disappear into the forest, counted to 100, then 200, then released her grip on the rifle, her hands shaking. "They're gone," she called to the inner chamber. For now. Garrett emerged looking grim. "They'll be back. That was just a preliminary sweep. Next time, they'll be more thorough. Then we need to be ready." Cole was checking the pin mechanism one more time, making sure it would pull smoothly when needed. "They're systematic, military trained like I thought, which means they'll follow a pattern. Search the easy areas first, then expand to the difficult terrain. They'll get here eventually." "How long?" "Day, maybe two." Wren nodded. Looked at Ash, who had finally relaxed, settling back near the stove. The dog trusted her to keep them safe. Garrett trusted her. Cole, for reasons she still didn't fully understand, trusted her. She couldn't let them down. The next day passed with agonizing slowness. Every sound from outside made Wren's heart race. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every shift in the mountain's natural settling sounded like someone prying at the entrance. But no one came. Garrett spent the day getting weaker. His coughing fits were almost constant now, each one leaving him gasping and pale. Blood flecked his handkerchief with greater frequency. Cole tried to get him to rest, but the old man refused. "I'll rest when this is over," he said. "Right now, Wren needs every pair of eyes we have." That night, Wren sat with him in the inner chamber while Cole took watch. Garrett was lying on the blankets, his breathing shallow, his face drawn with pain. "Thank you," Wren said quietly, "for everything. For keeping my father's promise. For helping me finish this place. For staying when you could have walked away." "Your father saved my life once," Garrett said. "Did I ever tell you that?" "No. I was working on a project. Big commercial building. I'd made a mistake in the structural calculations. Didn't catch it until we were halfway through construction. James did the audit, found the error, made me fix it. I was furious at the time. Thought he was second-guessing my expertise. But if we'd continued with my design, the building would have collapsed. Would have killed dozens of people. He coughed, wiped his mouth with a handkerchief that came away flecked with blood. He didn't save my life that day. He saved my soul. Saved me from being the architect whose building killed people. I owed him for that. Owed him a debt I could never repay. But helping you finish in this place, keeping you safe, that's as close as I'll ever get. You've done more than enough. No such thing. Garrett smiled weakly. Your father understood something most people don't. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you leave behind. You're his legacy, Wren. Everything he built, everything he planned it, was all for you. To give you a chance. To keep you safe. To make sure you had options when the world tried to take them away. He reached out, took her hand in his. His skin was cold, his grip weak. Promise me something. When this is over, when you're 18 and free, don't hide in this mountain forever. Don't let Ridge Haven become a prison. Your father built you a fortress, but he meant it as a launching pad. A place to get strong, then go back out and build something in the world. Promise me you'll do that. I promise. Good girl. His eyes closed. Good girl. Wren sat with him until his breathing evened out into sleep. Then she returned to the main chamber where Cole was still watching the entrance. How is he? Cole asked. Dying. Days, maybe. Not weeks. I'm sorry. Don't be. He's doing exactly what he wants to be doing. Finishing what he started. There are worse ways to go. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the mountain's ancient breathing, the small creaks and shifts of stone settling against stone. Can I ask you something? Wren said finally. Sure. That daughter of yours, the one in California, have you tried to find her? Cole was quiet for a long moment. Every year on her birthday, I send a letter to the last address I had for her mother. I don't know if she ever gets them. Don't know if she even knows I exist. But I send them anyway. Just in case. What do you say in the letters? That I'm sorry. That I love her. That if she ever needs anything, ever wants to know where she came from, I'm here. He smiled sadly. Stupid, probably. Writing letters to someone who'll never read them. But it makes me feel like I'm still her father, even if I'm not allowed to be. That's not stupid, Wren said. That's love. Maybe. Or maybe it's just guilt with better packaging. Before Wren could respond, Ash stood up. The hackles on his back rose like a mohawk. A low, steady growl rumbled from his chest. Cole grabbed his rifle. Wren moved to the observation port. 2 flashlight beams, moving through the forest, coming straight toward the ridge. They're back, she whispered. This time the men didn't pass by. They came directly to the rock face, as if they knew exactly where to look. The tall one pulled out the thermal imaging device again, swept it slowly along the stone. Then he stopped, pointed directly at the concealed entrance. Got something, he said to his partner. His voice carried clearly in the cold air. Heat signature. Faint, but it's there. Someone's inside. The shorter one moved closer, examining the rock face, ran his hands over the stone, feeling for seams, for anything out of place. His fingers found the edge of the facade. "Well, well," he said. "Looks like Frank's little girl is smarter than we thought. Military-grade concealment. Someone taught her well. Doesn't matter how well it's hidden if we found it." The tall one unslung his rifle. "Wren Thorne, we know you're in there. We're here on behalf of Frank Callahan. He just wants to talk, wants to make sure you're okay. Come out, and we can all go home nice and easy." Wren's mind raced. They'd found the entrance. The first layer of defense had failed. Now it came down to fortification or escape. She looked at Cole. He shook his head slightly. "Don't answer. Don't give them anything." Outside, the men were conferring. She couldn't hear what they said, but she could see them examining the entrance mechanism, trying to figure out how it opened. "This is sophisticated work," the shorter one said, loud enough to carry. "Had to take months to build. Someone helped you, didn't they, old man Doyle, I'd guess? Frank mentioned he used to work with your father." Still, Wren said nothing. "Here's the thing, sweetheart." The tall one's voice hardened. "We're professionals. This is what we do. We can wait you out, or we can come in. Your choice. But either way, you're coming with us. Frank's paying us $50,000 to deliver you safely. We're not leaving without you." 50,000. Frank had doubled the reward. His desperation had reached terminal velocity. The men were working on the entrance now, using tools Wren couldn't quite see. She heard metal scraping on stone, heard the grunt of effort as they tried to force the mechanism. Cole moved beside her. "They'll get through eventually. The facade is good, but it's not military grade. 40, maybe 50 minutes if they know what they're doing. Then we fall back to the passage. Let them come through, then I give them a choice. And if they don't take it, Wren didn't answer. Didn't need to. They both knew what came next. She moved to the inner chamber where Garrett was awake now, sitting up despite his obvious pain. "They found us," she said simply. Garrett nodded, unsurprised. "Then it's time. You know what to do." "I don't want to hurt anyone." "I know. But sometimes not wanting to hurt people and being willing to do it anyway is what makes you human instead of a victim." He gripped her hand. "Your father built this place with love, Wren. But he built it with steel, too. Use both." Cole was setting up their defensive position in the inner chamber. He'd positioned the rope that controlled the pin within easy reach and set up a lantern that would silhouette anyone coming through the passage without exposing their own position. "When they come through," he explained, "they'll be backlit. We'll see them clearly. They won't see us at all. That gives us about 3 seconds of advantage. Use it." "To do what?" "To convince them this is a bad idea. To make them understand that taking you isn't worth dying for." Outside, the sounds of forced entry grew louder. Metal on metal. The screech of stressed hinges. Then with a sound like a sigh, the entrance gave way. Silence. Wren imagined the men seeing the passage for the first time, seeing the narrow corridor carved through solid stone, understanding that they'd have to go through single file, vulnerable, exposed. Would it be enough to make them reconsider footsteps, cautious, professional, coming closer? A voice echoed down the passage. the tall one. "Miss Thorne, we're coming in. We don't want to hurt you. We just want to talk. Put down any weapons you have and let's work this out like civilized people." Wren picked up the rifle, checked that a round was chambered. Her hands were steady. Strange that. She'd expected them to shake. "Last chance," the voice called. "Come out now and nobody gets hurt." Wren looked at Cole, at Garrett. Both men nodded. She took a breath, stepped into the light where the men could see her. "This is my home," she called out, her voice echoing in the passage. "My father built it for me. It's mine legally and morally. You're trespassing. Leave now and we forget this happened." Silence. Then movement. The tall one stepped into view at the far end of the passage, his rifle held ready but not quite aimed. He was assessing, calculating. She could see it in his posture. "Can't do that, miss. We've got a job to finish." "Then I'll pay you to not finish it. I've got access to a trust fund. $50,000, same as Frank's offering. Take it and walk away." The man considered. She could see him running the numbers. Same money, less risk. "How do we know you're good for it?" "Garrett Doyle is the executor. He's here. He can authorize the transfer." Another pause. The man turned, conferred with his partner in low voices Wren couldn't hear. Then he looked back at her. "Not good enough. We take Frank's money, we're done and gone. We take yours, Frank hires someone else, and this starts all over again. Only solution is you come with us, sign Frank's papers, and everyone moves on with their lives." "I'm not signing anything." "Then we have a problem." The man raised his rifle, not pointing it at her exactly, just raising it. A threat, a promise. "Final offer, Miss Thorne. Walk out of there on your own or we come in and drag you out. You might get hurt in the process. We'd prefer that didn't happen, but we're authorized to use necessary force." Wren's hand found the rope, the pin that held back tons of granite, the line between defense and murder. "You come down this passage," she said, her voice steady, "and you won't make it to the other side. I've rigged this entire section. One pull and the ceiling comes down. You'll be buried alive." The tall man smiled. "Nice bluff, but I don't think you're a killer. I think you're a scared kid who's been backed into a corner. And scared kids make mistakes." He took a step forward. "Don't," Wren said. Another step. Her hand tightened on the rope. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her like the stone above. The man took a third step, and Garrett's voice, weak but clear, called out from behind her. "She's not bluffing. I designed this system. I know what it'll do. You take one more step, son, and you're going to find out what several tons of granite feels like." The man stopped, looked at his partner. They were both calculating now, weighing the risk. "You're an old man," the tall one said to Garrett. "Probably dying from the sound of that cough. You really want your last act on Earth to be crushing 2 men to death. I really want my last act to be protecting a girl who deserves better than the hand life dealt her," Garrett replied. "Whether that requires killing you is entirely up to you." The standoff stretched. Wren could feel sweat running down her back despite the cold. Her finger was on the rope, ready to pull. One motion. That's all it would take. The shorter man spoke up for the first time. This is bullshit, Ray. Frank didn't say anything about booby traps or last stands. He said the girl was alone and scared. This is a whole different situation. We took the job, and we can untake it. 50,000 ain't worth getting buried alive. The tall man, Ray, stared down the passage at Wren. She stared back. Neither blinked. Finally, Ray lowered his rifle. You win this round, kid. But Frank's not gonna stop. He's gonna keep sending people. Keep hunting you. You can hide in this cave for the rest of your life, or you can deal with the problem. I'll deal with it when I turn 18, 6 weeks from now. Then Frank has no legal claim, and anyone he sends is just committing assault for money. Harder to justify. Harder to find people willing to take the job. 6 weeks. Ray nodded slowly. Okay. We'll tell Frank we couldn't find you. Storm covered the trail, you must have died in the cold. But that only works if you stay invisible. You show your face anywhere, the whole thing starts over. I understand. The two men backed out of the passage. Wren kept her hand on the rope until she heard them reach the entrance, heard their footsteps receding into the forest. Only then did she let go. Her legs gave out. She sank to the floor, the rifle clattering beside her. Her whole body was shaking now, delayed reaction to the adrenaline crash. Cole put a hand on her shoulder. You did good. You held the line. I almost killed them, but you didn't. You gave them a choice, and they made it. That's all anyone can do. Garrett appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on the wall. His face was gray, his breathing labored. Your father would be proud, he said softly. You built something here. Not just walls and ventilation. You built yourself into someone who can defend what's hers without losing who she is. That's the real architecture. He slid down the wall, sitting hard. Cole moved to help him, but Garrett waved him off. I'm all right. Just need a moment. He looked at Wren. The hardest part is over. 6 weeks. You can do 6 weeks. But that night, Garrett got worse. The coughing became constant, racking his whole body. Blood appeared on the handkerchief in greater quantities. His breathing grew shallow and rapid. Cole checked his vitals, his expression growing grave. He needs a hospital. Real medical care. This is beyond what we can do here. He won't go, Wren said. He told me. He wants to finish this. It is finished. The entrance is secure. The defenses are in place. You've proven you can hold this place. He's done what he came to do. Then why won't he let us get him help? Cole was quiet for a moment. Because some men don't want to die in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, surrounded by strangers. They want to die in a place that matters, doing something that matters. I think Garrett's made his choice. Wren sat with Garrett through the night. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes rambling. In his clearer moments, he talked about her father, about projects they'd built together, buildings that still stood in 3 states, monuments to their shared vision. We were good together, he said at one point. James had the creativity. I had the technical skill. Between us, we made something beautiful. You still are, Wren said. This place, Ridge Haven, it's beautiful. Not because of the stone, because of you. Garrett's hand found hers. Promise me again. Promise you won't stay here forever. I promise. Good. His eyes closed. That's good. An hour before dawn, Garrett Doyle took his last breath. It was quiet, peaceful. He simply stopped breathing as if he'd finished everything he needed to do and saw no reason to continue. Wren held his hand until it grew cold. Then she gently closed his eyes and sat with him as the first light of morning filtered through the ventilation shafts. Cole found her there. He didn't say anything, just sat down beside her, and they mourned together in silence. They buried Garrett on the ridge above the cave, in a spot where the morning sun hit first, and the view stretched for miles. It took them all day to chip through the frozen ground, but Wren insisted. He deserved better than an unmarked grave in the dark. Cole fashioned a cross from 2 branches and carved Garrett's name into it with a knife. Wren spoke words she half remembered from a funeral she'd attended years ago. It wasn't much, but it was what they had. He was a good man, Cole said when it was done. The kind who keeps promises even when they're inconvenient. There aren't many of those left. No, Wren agreed. There aren't. That night, she opened her father's journal to the last page, the blank page he'd left for her, and she began to write. Dad, I finished it. Ridge Haven is complete. Everything you planned, everything you dreamed, it's real now. And it works. It kept me safe. It kept me alive. Just like you promised it would. Garrett's gone. He died helping me finish what you started. I think he was happy about that. He said it was the last thing he needed to build. I understand that now. Some things aren't about staying alive. They're about meaning something. I have 6 weeks left until I'm 18. Until I'm free. I'm gonna make it. Because of you. Because of Garrett. Because of everything you taught me about strength and structure. And standing firm when the world tries to knock you down. But I'm not gonna hide here forever. You built me a fortress, but you meant it as a beginning, not an end. When I'm 18, when this is over, I'm going back out. I'm going to college. I'm going to study architecture like you. And I'm going to build things that help people. Things that keep them safe. Things that give them options when the world tries to take them away. Thank you for the gift. Not just the cave. The whole thing. The knowledge. The tools. The example of how to live. How to build. How to love someone enough to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. I miss you. I'll always miss you. But I'm not lost anymore. I know who I am. I'm James Thorne's daughter. And I'm an architect. Love, Wren. She closed the journal, set it carefully on the shelf with her father's notebooks. Then she lay down on the blankets, Ash curled warm against her side, and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who had finally found solid ground. The remaining weeks passed slowly. Cole stayed partially to help, partially because he had nowhere else to go. They fell into a routine. Wren worked on improving Ridge Haven, adding small touches that made it feel more like a home. Cole taught her survival skills, how to trap game, how to purify water, how to navigate by stars. They didn't talk much, but the silence was companionable. Two people who'd both lost things finding small comfort in shared purpose. On Wren's 18th birthday, Cole hiked to town, and returned with a cake from the grocery store. It was slightly squashed from the journey, the frosting smeared, but it was the most beautiful thing Wren had ever seen. They ate it sitting at the table James Thorne had placed in this cave 18 years ago, planning for a daughter who didn't yet know she'd need it. "What now?" Cole asked. "Now I go see Coulter Hayes. Sign the papers to access my trust fund and my insurance payout. File a restraining order against Frank. File charges for assault and coercion. Then I apply to college. In Ridge Haven." Wren looked around the space that had been her home, her fortress, her salvation. "I'll keep it. Maintain it. Maybe offer it to other people who need a safe place. People running from things that can't be outrun. People who need time to get strong. Your father would like that." "Yeah," Wren agreed. "I think he would." The next morning, she packed a small bag, put on clean clothes Cole had brought from town, clipped a leash on Ash. At the entrance, she stopped, looked back at Ridge Haven one more time, at the space her father had carved from stone and vision, at the home she'd completed with her own hands. Then she stepped out into the sunlight and walked down the mountain, Ash at her side, heading toward a future she'd built herself. Behind her, the false facade swung shut. From 20 feet away, it was invisible. Just another section of granite on an ancient ridge. A secret keeping itself. A fortress waiting for the next person who needed it. The mountain stood silent and strong. And in a small cave in the heart of it, James Thorne's legacy lived on. 3 months later, Wren stood in the sheriff's office watching as Frank Callahan was led away in handcuffs. Coulter Hayes had done his job well. The evidence was overwhelming: assault, coercion, attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Frank would be going away for a long time. He looked at her as they took him past, not with anger, with something worse: defeat. The broken look of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Wren felt nothing. 6 months after that, she enrolled at Virginia Tech's School of Architecture. Her application essay had been about her father's work, about Ridge Haven, about what it meant to build spaces that protected people when the world became too dangerous. The admissions board had never read anything like it. A year later, she stood on the ridge above the cave, Ash beside her, looking out at the mountains that had saved her life. Cole was there too. He'd become something like family in the way that people who survive things together become bound by more than blood. "You did it," he said. "Everything your father wanted. You're free. You're building, you're living." "We did it," Wren corrected. "You and me and Garrett and my dad. All of us together." She opened her backpack and pulled out a small brass plaque. It read, "Ridge Haven, built by James Thorne, 2012 to 2013. Completed by Wren Thorne, 2025. Maintained by the Thorne Foundation. A refuge for those who need time to build their strength." She mounted it beside the concealed entrance where only those who truly needed to find it would see. Then she walked away from the mountain ash at her side, heading back toward the world. She would return. Ridge Haven would always be here waiting. Her father's gift. Her mother's training. Garrett's sacrifice. Cole's help. But for now, she had buildings to design, spaces to create, people to help. She had a life to build, and she was her father's daughter. She knew exactly how to do it.